this video, we're going to be looking at regular verbs, irregular verbs, and the 5 categories of irregular verbs. Let's begin by looking at the regular verbs. The irregular verbs are the verbs whose past tense end with the perfective form ed. For instance, jump, jumped, talk, talked, look, looked, expect, expected, shout, shouted, and so on and so forth. The regular form of the verbs is usually expressed in 4 different forms. Let's look at these 4 different forms. The first one is the infinitive or base form. That is the verb in its raw form. For instance, jump, talk, expect, shout, and so on and so forth. Now, the second form in which the regular verb is expressed is the third person singular form, and that is the verb in the raw form plus the S marker. For instance, jumps, talks, expects, shouts, etc. Then the third manifestation of the regular form of the verb is the progressive or the continuous form. That is the form that has the ing or the gerund. For example, jumping, talking, expecting, shouting, and so on and so forth. And the last manifestation of the regular form of the verb is the past tense or the past participle form, where you have jumped, talked, expected, shouted, and so on and so forth. Let's consider the irregular form of the verb. The irregular form of the verb expresses itself in those verbs that do not conform to the usual patterns of verb, in that some of their forms deviate from the expected pattern of the regular verbs. What we are saying in essence is that when you say a verb is irregular, it simply means that it does not go with the normal pattern of verbs, in the sense that it deviates from the expected pattern of regular verbs. In other words, they usually do not admit the ed pattern for their past tense forms, and they are in various categories. And so this will lead us to consider the 5 categories of the irregular verbs. Let's look at the first category. These have to do with those forms of the verb that have the same form in their past tense and in their past participle as their base form, and they do not end in ed like the other regular verbs. Let's take that again. The first category of the irregular verbs are those verbs who has the same form, both in their past tense and in their past perfective. They have the same form alongside the base form, which is the present tense. Let's take some examples of this. We have verbs like hit, set, hurt, caught, burst, bet, spread, slit, cast, cost, let, put, split, shed, and so on and so forth. When you look at these verbs, they are the same in their present tense, in their past tense, and in their perfective form. You don't have anything like shed, shedded. It's wrong to say put, putted, or split, splitted, or cast, casted. No, they express themselves in the same form in the present, in the past, and in the perfective form. The second category are those verbs that have 2 forms, both in their past and in their perfective forms. They have the same expression. For instance, you have verbs like wet. You can say wetted, and the perfective form wetted. You have verbs like burn, burnt, and burnt. Weave, weaved, weaved, or woven, woven, and the others as listed on the screen. The third category of the irregular forms of the verb are those verbs that have past tenses that do not end in ed and have the same form as the past participle forms. Let's see some examples. Ring, wrong and wrong. Bend, bent and bent. Strike, struck, struck. Sling, slung, slung. Cling, clung, clung. Grind, ground, ground. Lend, lent, lent. Lead, led, led, and the others as displayed on the screen. The fourth category of the irregular verbs are those verbs that have regular past tense forms but two possible past participles, one of which could be a regular form. For instance, mow, mowed. In the perfective form, you can have mowed or mown. Prove, proved, proved or proven. Sow, sowed, sowed or sown. Show, showed, showed or shown. Sow, sowed, sowed or sown. And swell, swelled. You can have it as swelled or swollen. Let's look at the last category of the irregular verbs. And these are verbs that have their present, their past tenses, and their past participles different from one another. They are not the same at all. We have examples like begin, began, begun, bid, bade, bidden, blow, blew, blown, drink, drank, drunk, forbear, forbore, forborn, forbid, forbade, forbidden, freeze, froze, frozen, forswear, forswore, forsworn, hew, hewed, hewn, lie, lay, lain, ring, rang, wrong, saw, sawed, sawn, shrink, shrank, shrunk, spring, sprang, sprung, slay, slew, slain, stink, stank, stunk, stride, strode, stridden, strive, strove, striven, swim, swam, swarm. Now you can look at these forms of the verb and put them in sentences. Remember that regular verbs have four forms of manifestation: the infinitive or the base form, the third person singular form, the progressive form, and the past tense or past participle form. While the irregular verbs have 5 categories in their manifestations as explained in this video. Thank you for watching this channel. Kindly subscribe and hit the notification button and stay tuned for the next video. See you around.